This is Patrick with Top Tier Top Lane, and this is just a fast video on what I like to call Tier 1 macro, or basically just macro that takes place around the outer ring of towers and the objectives that spawn before Baron. Now, basically, I'm going to be focusing on what you should do as the team with the advantage, who takes the first tower typically, but generally the answer is trying your best to match and oppose the winning team to slow down how fast they take things. The only exception is if they move the game at such a breakneck speed that there's no more objectives for them to reasonably take. If they take all the like they take Herald, they take Dragon, they take the outer ring of towers, then the game can be sped up and trades can be okay. But for the most part, the actual slowing down of the game and preserving as much as you can is more important than that strange theoretical that you sometimes hear about. Oh, trading even gold is good for the losing team. While that's good in theory, towers aren't just gold, and tempo can be far more important. So regardless, we're going to stick to some really basic stuff. So there will be a lot of exceptions, and I'm just going to say that I'm going to briefly mention that there are exceptions when there are, but I'm not going to go into all of the possible exceptions and everything, because that's why macro is not something that every player can do. But this is going to cover very basic shit that everyone should know if they are willing to commit like 10 minutes to watching this video. Okay, so let's imagine that bot lane outer turret goes down. What do you do? Well, most of the time, if you see people not just walk back bot, which happens all too frequently, even into like mid-diamond, you'll see a lot of this, just people kind of forgetting. But you'll also see people in gold and silver trying to rotate. Now, ideally, you push the lane so you don't lose minions and take free turret damage while you're rotating. But generally, what you're going to do is you're going to swap your bot lane top. Now, if you have enough pressure and it's not going to be a major tempo loss, you want to take the dragon. Based on what dragon it is, this can be of varying importance. Typically, if it's very early in the game, with most team comps, Ocean Dragon holds one of the highest priorities, with Infernal and Air being next and Mountain Dragon being lowest. Now, if it's a little bit later in the game, you can swap Ocean to lowest priority, maybe tied with Mountain, and work towards Air and Dragon being the top dragons. Now, or Air and Infernal, I'm sorry. Now, again, there are exceptions. Maybe you have a team that wants to pressure around Baron but doesn't have a very fast Baron. Then Mountain Dragon goes up in priority. Again, this is just the basic stuff. So you have to make the decision if you're going to do this Dragon or not, and make that sort of a tempo sacrifice. Now, once you swap, and again, there are times you wouldn't want to swap based on the enemy top and bot, but in about 80% of games, it's good to just swap, assuming your bot lane's stronger, start pressuring the top lane tower. Again, you can, based on certain things with tempo, you can start to go mid. The champion that is mid on the opposing team especially does matter for this. For the most part, it's fine. It works 90% as well, even when it's better to go mid, to just go top. So basic solo queue stuff, just send your bot lane top, send your top laner bot. Now, your jungler, this is really important. You see way too often that people understand up into what I said, right? But what happens is that, all right, they're, god damn, it's been a while since I've used this die, right, okay. AD carry and support swap. Enemy bot lane kind of forgets more often than when they're the proactive team. And what happens is, AD carry and support are top. Enemy top is top. AD carry and support push. The jungler decides that he doesn't really care about taking 2 towers in the next 2 minutes or whatever, which is what you can do against unprepared teams very easily. The jungler says, I think Krugs are a good option. Or I think Raptors are a good option. I think I want to counter jungle the enemy jungler. I want to be anywhere except here. he needs to be ghosting. He needs to be around based on how fast and explosive the fights can happen. He needs to be a certain distance. He can afford to maybe do Gromp if he can't contribute too much to a siege or tower taking, if this is going to be a slow fight. But if it's going to be a fast fight, jungler needs to be close. He needs to be really close. Mid, their job is to push and roam top. Again, there are times that it would be okay to ghost bot to try to 2-2 the enemy bot. Generally, you just want to shadow the bot laners. Not the bot lane, but the bot laners. So it's generally 4 people and 1 person. And the mid laner's job is to keep mid tower safe by wave clearing, immediately rotate top. The jungler, he needs to be around the area and contribute how he can. The support generally, just rewinding a bit, when AD carry and support recall and they break out, the support runs this way. Ideally, the jungler is already in position to assist with this, mid laner too, in a way, pushing out mid and being ready to roam. And the support gets vision. This is imperative that when, I can't stress how terrible this is, when AD carry and support decide they're going to start pushing, but they feel so strong because it's a 2v1 and they just took bot tower, that they don't even think about the fact that the enemy jungler can be top, maybe even the enemy mid is top. When your fucking jungler is bot and your mid has no intention of roaming up, you need wards, you need far out wards, and you need to be very defensive if you're AD carry and support, because not only will the enemy top and jungle likely be able to 2v2 you, because the top laner is going to be a higher level, and well, so is the jungler, because your bot laners, you're not as strong as the solo laners yet, or solo lane plus jungle. They can 2v2 you very easily at this stage in the game. They're bruisers, they're tanks. You're like, even if you are like, certain champions might have a chance at 2v2ing if they're ahead, but for the most part, bot laners are going to get smashed by a top jungle duo who gets the gank on them. So as AD carry and support, you can't be super aggressive in pushing this tower. You need to wait for your jungler. You need to wait till you see the enemy jungler. You need to have a degree of safety. We've all been there where the bot lane swaps and they die. This is super frustrating, and it happens on my my Smurf, which is about Diamond 4 right now. I go out of my way to not swap if I don't feel like telling my bot lane what to do, because I would prefer to stay in standard lanes and have them push inner turret or whatever the hell they want to do than to have them die in the 2v2. And this literally happens probably 30% of games. And it's so catastrophic when it does happen that it is it's not worth the risk by any stretch. It's actually worth it to just stay in standard lanes and not take the top outer, rather than have your bot die and possibly lose a tower. And all the meanwhile, you're getting hammered in a 1v2. This can lead to 2 towers being taken, so that's really the only consideration. It's not hard to be safe because you do have a numbers advantage. The same thing can happen if the opposing bot lane decides that they actually do want to swap. Then we can assume that everybody is matched. Still, the winning bot lane that took the first tower is more than likely going to be taking the second tower, right? They need to remember they might have put a control ward here. They might have like a ward here or whatever. They might have good vision control. But if the support doesn't remember to immediately drop this, then they're just going to die from the opposing jungler gank. Now, assuming they do everything right, and now they have 2 towers, maybe they decided to trade a tower. Again, if the enemy bot stays and trades a tower, that's good for you, because now you're 2 towers to 1, and you can take mid while they take only a side lane tower. That's amazing. So then you are 3 towers to 2, and you have mid, and if you have mid, you can control both objectives, and it snowballs from there. Your bot lane takes the objective. Again, if they wanted to take dragon earlier, then great. Otherwise, you can do your best to avoid the enemy taking dragon. Again, that's a major tempo hit, so they might not even be able to take bot lane tower if the enemy bot lane decides to stay bot and take dragon while you're taking top outer. Trading most dragons for an outer is worth it at this stage in the game when you've already gotten the first tower, because that means the speed, the pace of the game is going to be too hard to overcome. So dragon scaling won't be relevant in a game like that. So next you're going to want to move. We're just going to reload this page, reset everything. Next you want to take on mid. You want to get the last tower. But you do have a pretty good option in Herald. Assuming that dragon is no longer up, The top is not really relevant because dragon's gone. So if you have, bot. If you have bot tower or not is not relevant right now. The winning team can look to pressure Herald. Now, this is interesting. If you can take mid in a siege or by superior rotations, catching people out, you take mid because the later you get the Herald, generally the more effective it is. And if you're already snowballing the game at a fast pace, delaying Herald is quite important because until you can actually pressure Baron, you can't really push the inner turrets. Inner turrets are pretty hard to get unless you have like a monster split push, or you're really strong, the enemy's making mistakes. Largely, inner towers are fairly hard to crack, or if their enemy mid laners doesn't have any range wave clear, or they don't have any range wave clear at all, then you can just siege towers and win. But assuming they have like a decent team comp with range wave clear, generally speaking, you're not going to crack these inner turrets. If you're far enough ahead that you can siege down mid without taking Herald, you generally want to siege down mid, and then they don't have any outers. You have both outers because you swapped to protect this one, so you definitely have your mid and top outer now. Again, standard, real life happens, games happen, but this is just standard macro, okay? You take the Herald after mid if you can. Before mid, use it to crack mid if you're having trouble with it. The same can be said for something like top if you're really having trouble with like cracking that, and you're not able to actually kill mid with a single charge, like it's not low enough. But for the most part, you want to use Herald to get through a sort of a plateau in your push, right? Assuming you're accelerating game pace, you want to keep your lead going. Herald should be used for getting that. It's generally a very back-breaking play if you use it correctly, because if you already have the advantage, the Herald can give you a massive increase in tempo just off of a single push with it, which almost definitely results in a tower if you're ahead. And that tower can be a tower that you wouldn't otherwise be able to take. And if you were already taking towers, that means at least you finish their outer ring of towers, and maybe you even crack into here, right? So it's pretty nice no matter what. And now you've got an outer ring of towers, basically playing completely standard. At most, you trade 3 for 2 towers. Again, losing 2 towers after you lose the first tower, or after you take first tower bot. If you want to trade, if they want to trade both your outer towers for, if they want to take your top and bot, and they'll give you top and mid, you take that every time because mid tower is so important, because accelerating game pace is so important, and because on the time they're spending bot, you can take Herald likely as well as mid, especially if they go for dragon or something. So you want to take into consideration the tempo loss you get, especially with dragon. Herald not so much because you make up for it in the charge that you get. You want to keep in mind that Herald and dragon are used, especially Herald, to draw people out and force them to fight, because if they have a team comp that's very good at just holding and stalling, Herald can break that, and the enemy is forced to match you out in the open. This is especially relevant before the super late game. It's much easier to win as a team that's ahead fighting over Herald than it is for, say, a Baron, because Herald doesn't lower your resistances, and enemies are not going to have as many gigantic AoEs, and abilities won't be as polarized as they are in the late game due to levels and item specialization. So generally, this whole guide is just how to crack the early game. I might do one later, but late game is similarly standard. In a sense, I don't exactly. It was already hard for me to go over all this without listing, the million exceptions to everything. But late game has even more exceptions, but there is a general way to do it. So maybe I'll make that in the future. But for now, this is something that is just sickening that people don't know how to do, and I'm making this guide so maybe people will learn how to do it or not. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed watching. Thanks.